There was no pause on the doorstep, no budget box, but some budget-style big price tag policies. The Chancellor came to the Commons to warn of a long climb back to economic health after a shutdown forced on the nation by COVID.
We haven't done everything we have so far. Just to step back now and say job done. In truth, the job has only just begun.
His most expensive policy, a job retention bonus. He hopes will incentivise employers to hold on to their workforce when the furlough scheme ends at the end of October.
If you're an employer and you bring someone back who was furloughed and you continuously employ them through to January, we will pay you a £1,000 bonus per employee. We will pay the bonus for all furloughed employees. So if employers bring back all 9 million people who have been furloughed, this would be a £9 billion policy to retain people in work.
There was emergency support for the hospitality sector, starting with a big cut in VAT for pubs, restaurants and tourist accommodation.
Eat-in or hot takeaway food from restaurants, cafes and pubs. Accommodation in hotels, B&Bs, campsites and caravan sites. Attractions like cinemas, theme parks and zoos. All these and more will see VAT reduced from next Wednesday until January the 12th from 20% to 5%.
Hello.
The hospitality sector is in such peril, the Chancellor announced an untried policy. The government picking up half the tab for meals out this August.
This moment is unique. We need to be creative. I can announce today that for the month of August, we will give everyone in the country an Eat Out to Help Out discount. Meals eaten at any participating business, Monday to Wednesday, will be 50% off up to a maximum discount of £10 per head for everyone, including children.
Colchester town centre, like so many high streets around the country, venues for eating and drinking out have taken over many old retail and banking outlets. The hospitality sector workforce nationwide is 2.4 million, and the government hopes measures on meal discounts and VAT cuts can save some jobs and lure customers back in.
We don't have enough customers in as well because people are scared to go out still, but this will help us a lot really, to be honest.
I think that's amazing, and it'll help restaurants as well, and like the general trade and the recovery following this pandemic.
That sounds fantastic, and we can make quite frequently, so I shall make more of it on a Monday to Wednesday.
I won't be going back for a while yet, no, I wouldn't go back. No. But then I'm at the age when I suppose they say I'm vulnerable, so yeah. First day out today.
Sectors like hospitality are likely to shrink in the years ahead, and the scale of the support the government has announced today, which is rightly focused on those sectors, is unlikely to be big enough to stop that happening. We are likely to see significant jobs being shaken out from those sectors in the months and years ahead.
To help younger workers get new jobs, the government announced 6-month work placements for the under-25s at risk of long-term unemployment. And new apprenticeships too. Adam Fuller is an apprentice chef at Stoke-by-Nayland Hotel in Essex, where he's been put on a flexible furlough and longs to stay in the sector he loves.
I really would like to hope that I could stay in this career. I will try my 100% best to stay in culinary. So that's what I want to do. I don't really enjoy doing other stuff like sitting there behind a desk. It's not my thing. Standing there cooking is what makes me happy.
The Chancellor also announced stamp duty would be waived for 9 months for houses under £500,000, hoping it'll boost building, decorating and some retail. But when the economic crisis subsides, many economists think taxes will move in the other direction.
If we're not going to have austerity on the spending side, and the economy is likely to be smaller than it otherwise would have been, and actually probably the spending on things like health will be more going forward, it is very hard to see in the medium run, and I don't mean this year and I don't mean next year, but I mean 3 or 4 years down the road, it's very hard to see a world in which we don't have higher taxes.
But this was an event Rishi Sunak was happy to be linked with. His glossy tweets had no mention of the government or the party he serves, and which some Tories, in the midst of a spending and borrowing splurge, struggle to recognise. Well, those images of Rishi Sunak serving people in a restaurant, very striking. He's trying to say to the country, it's all very normal and nice in here. But the challenge for him, and he knows it well, is that it's not normal and nice out there. Anybody going to a restaurant will have walked past an awful lot of scary signage. They'll probably have come from home listening to Canada cheering on a football game, and they'll be walking past empty offices like the ones around here in Whitehall because lots of people are working from home. One of the other interesting things that these documents that came out with the statement today throws up is there's a bit of a breakdown of some of the recent public spending, and some of it is eye-popping stuff. £15 billion has been spent on PPE procurement or set aside for the spending on that. 10 billion for test and trace. This is the new government pie chart, the enlarged pie chart that now has to be somehow funded from shrunken tax revenues. Today for the Chancellor was really about how he gets the country off the furlough scheme, the life support machine for the economy as many in the Treasury see it. And he did illuminate how he intends to do that in the first phase. But the bigger questions about what he intends to do weren't answered today. It's very telling that he couldn't call this a budget because in the Treasury they just feel there are far too many shifting sands now to be able to make the sort of decisions that you make in a budget. We wait for the autumn for that, and the range of possible options that they could be looking at then is absolutely vast.
Gary Gibbon. Well, now, how did the offer of VAT and stamp duty cuts, money off meals and youth employment schemes go down in the new Conservative areas which were former Labour heartlands? These so-called red wall areas have become all too used to years of financial decline, even before the pandemic. Darshna Soni has been to Stoke.
People need to know that although hardship lies ahead, no one will be left without hope.
They're accustomed to hardships here in Stoke-on-Trent, a city built on the back of its pits and pottery. The decline of these industries left many without much hope, even before the pandemic.
It's completely dead. You could take a walk round and you could see there's just not much going on at all.
I see it around Stoke, definitely. I know a lot of people have been struggling.
The Chancellor hopes his carefully crafted summer statement will help mould the economy back to good health. 2 of Sarah Griggs's 4 children are currently furloughed. She welcomed Mr Sunak's announcement that firms will pay a bonus for every staff member kept on when the furlough scheme ends.
I worry about my daughter because she's at John Lennon Airport, and I do think that, you know, she might lose her job because she's furloughed until October. And if people don't go on holidays, and I understand why they wouldn't, then, you know, that part of the economy is not going to pick up either.
John French started his career as an apprentice aged 16. He spent 30 years in a ceramics industry that once employed nearly 60,000 people. He's pleased with the Chancellor's announcement of a bonus for employers who take on apprentices.
Oh, wow. I know a lot of young people that maybe, you know, they haven't got the skill behind them, so they're working in shops, you know, restaurants, hospitality. And of course, those are the places that have been hit the most. And, you know, it looks like it's going to be like that for quite a few months at least.
And it's concern for the hospitality industry that led to many of today's other offerings. Joseph Bailey reopened his restaurant this week, but guidelines on social distancing meant he had to reduce the number of covers from around 100 to fewer than 60.
Everything that's been announced today is obviously a positive step for us on our road to recovery. VAT is something quarterly that it can cripple small businesses like us. It's a huge, huge expense.
Our economy depends on consumerism, and the Chancellor wants to encourage us all to spend more. One of his slogans today, eat out to help out. But is this enough to help high streets across the country that were already struggling, even before this pandemic?
We are doubling down on our ambition to level up.
Those promises of levelling up saw Labour wiped out here, in a city dubbed the Brexit capital of Britain, with nearly 70% voting leave.
Was there enough for the regions in this announcement?
I think it is important that the government do remember their levelling up agenda. The house prices here are so low compared to, for example, London, that the stamp duty level doesn't really apply, and will have very little impact on most of the houses in Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire.
This clay manufacturing business in the city has been going for 40 years. It's owned by Anna Alt's family. They've had to furlough many of their staff, but feel confident that they will recover, helped by today's announcements.
I think it's a very difficult situation that the government are in. I feel that they have put a great deal of support out there that has helped businesses such as ourselves, but I think there's still further support needed.
Research has suggested it's the Midlands and North that will come out of this pandemic in a worse shape than the rest of England. And so the Chancellor's pledge that he won't accept unemployment as inevitable has been welcomed in a city that has experienced more than its fair share of it.
Well, earlier I spoke to Stephen Barclay, who's the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and I began by putting it to him that to justify a £30 billion package, the government's predictions for the economy must be absolutely terrible. So, should people be braced for high unemployment?
Well, we've been clear that there will be further unemployment, and we face, as we do globally, a severe economic shock as a consequence of the pandemic. But what the OBR has been clear about, what the Bank of England governor has said, is the cost of inaction would be far greater. So yes, the £30 billion announced today is a significant package on top of the fiscal measures we set out at the budget, the infrastructure spend, the work on maintenance, the Green Deal, recovery jobs that we've set out. But what's clear is if we don't, then particularly young people will be affected through a recession. And so it's far better to take this action now than have those displaced costs in the future.
But your package is trying to stimulate demand. You're trying to say to people, go out and spend money.
Yeah.
Why should people spend money when they still fear the consequences of COVID and all the job losses and possible lockdowns that it entails?
Well, there's a combination. So part of the measure, if you take, say, the Eat Out to Help Out, that's about getting demand through the week. So that is targeted Monday to Wednesday. A huge amount of work has been done.
But you'd be irresponsible to spend your money if you fear that your job may go later on in the year when we have a winter crisis and possibly more lockdowns.
Well, the data doesn't support that, because if you look at about 25 billion has been paid into household bank accounts. So people have had some money. There is the ability to go out and spend. But it's also right now that we reopen the economy, but we do so in a sensible way. And that's about accelerating our infrastructure, getting the construction industry going, the stamp duty cut, for example, to
I mean, we've listed all those things. I mean, you're going to have a big budget where the Chancellor has said that the public finances, the national debt, must be put back on a sensible footing. You've said we're not returning to austerity, so that means tax rises, doesn't it?
Well, we've said in the autumn that we will come forward with a budget and a spending review, and that is about getting the finances onto a long-term setting. Now, it is the case at the moment that interest rates are a record low because of the difficult decisions that the government took over the last decade to get the deficit down from 10% to under 2%. That's why we've been able to have the confidence from the markets through gilts to borrow the money that we've needed.
But what is a sensible footing?
That will be shaped by how, the impacts of how quickly we reopen the economy. It will be shaped by, for example, local lockdowns, as we've seen in Leicester. But the key thing is we get the demand back into areas such as hospitality and tourism. That's what the Chancellor said.
I'm talking further forward. You say the public finances must be on a sensible footing. What does that mean? If national debt is already more than 100% of the size of the economy, what is a sensible footing?
Well, we said that because of the combination of the difficult decisions we've taken in the past, combined with the fact that interest rates are at a record low, that makes increased debt sustainable. But as the Chancellor said in the Chamber today, at the budget we will then need to address the long-term position. And
so
we will do that.
Rises,
we will do that at the budget. We will set that out. I'm not going to speculate on,
there's
on
only
tax and
tax
spend
rises
now.
or spending cuts.
We're not going to do the budget now. When we'll do it in the autumn, and it will be shaped by how quickly we get the economy moving. And key to that is retaining people's link with their jobs.
But
also recognising for some who do lose their jobs, for example, that's why we brought forward the £2 billion of measures with the Kickstarter scheme, which is about saying let's have some targeted action to give them the skills to get them back into the economy.
Well, on that, I mean, if you're an employer who takes on somebody at, say, £25,000 a year, and your revenue has plummeted by maybe 20, 30, 40%, £1,000 isn't going to be enough to get them back, is it?
Well, it's a combination.
I mean, that's
the key,
2 weeks' wages.
Well, the key, I mean, again, this has been done in conjunction with talking to business leaders. The CBI, for example, were supporting these measures. The TUC have talked about the previous Labour scheme, and we've taken a look at that, but we've made changes to improve it from what it. So this is a broader cohort.
Just finally, on a piece of detail, I mean, the numbers have changed on the amount that you're spending on public services, and the Treasury papers say that you're spending £10 billion on test and trace. Where's that money going? I mean, what's it for? Are you planning to pay people to stay at home if they've got to isolate?
So there's a combination. There's a delegated budget that's been allocated to the Department of Health for track and trace. That is for a number of things moving forward, but it includes the people that are manning the calls and making those interventions to encourage people. But the cost of that is a small sum compared to the cost of the economy if we're not able to reopen. So there's a combination of things, the technology, the people concerned, the information gathering that's involved. It's a major exercise, as Diana Harding has set out to Parliament, but that cost is far less than the cost of the economy if we're not able to reopen as we intend to do.
Stephen Barclay, thank you very much.
Well, joining us now is the Shadow Chancellor, Annalise Dodds. Annalise Dodds, it's rather interesting. He seems to have been doing a bit of cross-dressing, pinching a few Labour clothes. Would that be right?
Well, certainly we were very keen that government should learn from schemes that have operated well in the past. Of course, Labour had that Future Jobs Fund that was quite effective after the last global financial crisis. The Welsh Labour government has a version of that in place as well. So we were saying to government, look, please learn from these examples about helping young unemployed people in particular. I am pleased that they've taken that on board. But really the big elephant in the room here is that government has not shifted from its position on the job retention scheme and the self-employed scheme. They're still having that one-size-fits-all approach across all sectors of our economy. And we are concerned that that will lead to additional waves of unemployment unless government changes course.
What sort of sum would that elephant have cost?
Well, we've said to government that it should be having a sectoral strategy. It should be looking at which businesses are simply not able to open because of the issues with social distancing. Now, government today said that it was going to be providing, for example, £9 billion to all employers who are able to keep their staff on. That was going to be an amount of money available to absolutely all of them. We've said that actually we need to have a strategy here that reflects the fact that different sectors might need that support. Now, I can't say to you right now exactly how much that would cost. You know, ultimately, government would need to be assessing that, but based on which parts of the economy were still locked down, which ones still couldn't operate to capacity, and also in which places businesses can't operate to capacity. You know, we had government just today saying, for example, that they wouldn't be extending those measures in places like Leicester, for example. We think they need to be taking a longer term approach to this because potentially we could see quite a number of problems coming down the road in the future unless they have more flexibility.
But it's all very well. Are people ready to respond to this? Of course, some of the measures are indeed for further down the track. But the idea of trying to get people into cafes and restaurants and all the rest of it with inducements, there are a lot of people out there who say, look, how far is this coronavirus done? We're pretty sure it isn't.
Well, I think that's the big concern. And I did say to the Chancellor today, you know, I fully appreciate that he's not the Secretary of State for Health, but I did say to him that actually that critical factor of confidence is so important here. We really need to get test, track and isolate right in particular. I mean, there are things the Chancellor himself can do to help to sort that out. I mean, we've seen almost £3 billion worth of contracts to outsourced companies through this period. You know, are they really all delivering to the extent they should be? We would say clearly they're not, because we don't have test, track and isolate working properly. But also, you know, government needs to look again at sick pay. Sorry, go on.
But, but therefore, do you think actually he's moved too soon?
Well, I mean, I do think that we need to see demand coming back to the extent that it can, but I think it's a mistake for the Chancellor not to be focused on these public health related factors, because, you know, we do know from opinion poll data that there are many people who are lacking confidence. Government needs to deal with that head on. That does mean particularly sorting out test, track and isolate. And part of that, again, is around sorting out sick pay. You know, we don't have sick pay for many different people working in our economy. It's at a very low level. That really is risking people not isolating when they should be. And, you know, we do still seem to have quite high levels of infection, unfortunately, and that is becoming an economic issue.